understand where he is right now, which is Platt Avenue and Highlander Road, not all that far from his house. He's riding around on this motorcycle. You can see the LAPD right behind him. He's had a few moments that we've seen in the last few minutes where he's stopped. Here now we see an officer getting out, guns drawn on him, dangerous situation here, and he decides, yep, I'm going to keep going. So this all happening in the middle of a residential neighborhood where people, watch out, here we go as we approach the intersection, is where things get really dangerous. Thankfully, the guy stopped there. But this is the middle of rush hour where people are out, maybe walking their dogs, having a nice night outside. Pedestrians could be in the way here, and traffic on the roads.
All right, it's currently 7 o'clock. This is when you would typically see Billy Bush and Extra, but we will stay with this coverage of this pursuit in the San Fernando Valley of this man on a motorcycle. He's got his helmet on. You see LAPD there right behind him, stopped. We can also tell you that it's not just LAPD that's out there. It is LAFD as well. The fire department is a part of this because, again, this all was called in the 5 o'clock hour over concerns of his mental health, said to be outside of his home, waving a gun around. And so initially, first responders did respond, and that included LAPD and LAFD. So we have seen a shot of that neighborhood where he lives, reportedly, and there were fire engines and plenty of police cars there. And so he's pulled up to another stoplight here. This is Platt Avenue and Victory Boulevard. Looks like he may have gotten a chance to go through. Thank goodness. We're always concerned about public safety, which is why we stay on the air with these. Speeds now, he's got the wide open road, speeds above 60 miles per hour. Now that we're tight, Alex, we don't see the black and whites, but we know that they're there. We've also seen him taunting police. We haven't seen any signs of the weapon that he reportedly had. Again, he was said to have a gun and waving it around, and that was in the 5 o'clock hour, and that's when this all started.
So here we go. The road's not especially packed right now in this neighborhood, but this guy going this fast, approaching 70 miles an hour on a side street, huge danger for him and a danger for others, but especially dangerous for him. We've seen on these motorcycles in the past, no real protection. This guy's wearing a helmet, but besides that, if he rams into something at those speeds, it could be a deadly incident for him. Clearly, this guy doesn't seem to be acting rationally, based off of, the mental illness call to his house. But, you worry about folks in this community that are just trying to enjoy their night and have no idea that this is coming. And it makes it more complicated also for law enforcement in this situation, that they know that he has access to a weapon and is not acting rationally. They have to be more cautious in the way that they approach him. You see officers do have their guns drawn out the windows right there, trying presumably to talk to this guy and give him commands that he is simply not following as he continues to evade. Now he's like literally giving them the hand motion, like blah, 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 so clearly they're speaking to him and he's not respecting them. You feel for this other random car that's stuck in the middle there.
All right, we want to show you a scene earlier, not long ago, when he pulled him right into a cul-de-sac there, and you'll see him go up on the sidewalk and through the cul-de-sac to evade officers more. This was also about the time that he ended up back at his neighborhood and where those fire engines were and the other LAPD officers there. So now we're back live full screen here. Speeds again, open road against traffic, speeds in the 70s. And we keep seeing that sort of play out when he gets to an intersection, he stops, the officers will get out, guns drawn, and he doesn't seem to be paying much attention to them other than sort of, giving them the hand and blah, blah, blah. And it looked like at one point he was waving. So there's the first LAPD officer and the second, and we're off and running. Alex, we often talk about how do we bring these pursuits to an end safely. You know, we talk about the pit maneuver.
Right.
We talk about the spike strips. You wouldn't do a pit maneuver, obviously, with a motorcyclist.
It could kill him.
Yep.
So you don't have the a chance to do the pit maneuver. Spike strip, harder to deploy and easier to get around if you're on a bike. Boxing him in, which they also do sometimes to vehicles, much harder to do. We've seen them try to box this guy in, and he just sort of rides around it. So it is very difficult for these guys to bring this thing to an end. You got to hope at some point the guy just gives up and he's over his joyride, but who knows what's going through his mind at this point as he drives through the streets of the West Valley. We're now at Valley Circle Boulevard and Ventura Boulevard, which is right in the middle of the San Fernando Valley, right in the middle of rush hour when people are coming home from a long day of work and not expecting to be caught in the middle of a pursuit.
1, 2, 3, 4. Before we zoomed in a little tighter there, we saw those officers pull up, those 4 units there. It looks like some of them are out of the car and then some of them remain in the vehicle. It looks like more and more out. Again, sort of the same scenario that we've seen play out. He gave some sort of a gesture just now. He's obviously looking back, talking. There's a conversation underway. Obviously trying to get him to stop and to surrender. Doesn't look like he has any intention, though, of doing that.
No, and the hard thing also, if this guy really did have a gun as he sort of erratically communicates with them and then rides off again, is that it makes it very difficult and dangerous for them to approach him. You could just say, okay, you got that many cops in one place, why not just grab him off the bike and be done with this thing? But they don't know if he's armed or potentially has a weapon on him and could shoot them, which is why, they got all day. They're not worried about sports games that may be happening or other things that other people may be focused on, or time of programming. They're worried about getting home safely, and they can take as much overtime and bring in as many resources as needed.
They're worried about keeping the public safe,
Right.
to your point, that they assume that he's armed because, again, if you're just joining us thinking that you're going to see extra, we've been covering this pursuit of this motorcyclist in the San Fernando Valley. The initial report was a man with a gun in his own neighborhood. There were concerns about his mental health. There are fire engines, and there are also LAPD officers at his home within this neighborhood that's nearby. And he took off on the motorcycle, and that's when this pursuit officially started. So we've been watching this. We want to show you some video from earlier. So the bigger picture on your screen now is what happened earlier. This is what I'm talking about. You see those fire engines, LAFD. There's plenty of them, 1, 2, 3, and then you see the several LAPD units there on the scene. That is the neighborhood in which this all started, on that street there on Coasat Road, I believe it is. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. But now back live fully here. Old Topanga Canyon Road and Bluebird Drive. Alex, it's 7 o'clock at night, just after, and it's a good thing that these roads are pretty quiet.
Well, there is, big sports game happening that some people may be watching right now that may lead to a little bit less traffic than you usually would get at this time. But we are looking at, which is good, because the way this guy's driving, it could be dangerous for folks that might be out, and you're concerned about those folks who may get unintentionally hit by all of this. So now we're going on Mulholland Highway in Old Topanga Road. You may start heading up in towards more of the mountains if we stay on Mulholland here. These are some of the sort of iconic streets of Los Angeles that could make this windy and challenging for law enforcement and for this motorcyclist who has to navigate that street.
Speeds in the 60s. The incident first reported at the intersection of, or the closest intersection anyway, is Wyndham Street and Coasat Street. there in West Hills and now Mulholland Way, and that's where this currently puts us. And streets wide open. We haven't seen because we're a little tighter on the shot, we haven't seen LAPD vehicles, but they are there. There's several of them in pursuit of this guy who was said to be unstable and having a gun outside of his home, or maybe it was in his home, and neighbors or family members were concerned and called, and first responders did show up.
Saw lots of cruisers going the other direction there a few seconds ago. So this is more in the Calabasas neighborhood where we are now. The city of Calabasas is LA County Sheriff, but we see some of those LAPD folks still a part of this because this started in LAPD territory. And you're seeing this guy really flying now through the streets on Mulholland Drive. These are hills that often are brown and full of brush, but now are as green as you will ever see them because of our recent rain. And now we're seeing him head down the street.
All right, we want to bring in retired police officer Tim Lynn into our coverage for more perspective. Thank you so much, Officer Lynn. We appreciate your time. Why don't you tell us what we should be making of this pursuit? We often cover these pursuits, but it's been a while, at least for me, to cover one on a motorcycle. That changes things up on how you bring this to an end.
Well, normally the motorcycle pursuits don't last that long because usually the motorcycle will cut traffic and go through areas that the cars can't keep up with and go at very high rates of speed. But watching this one here, he seems to be just cruising along at normal speeds, and all LAPD can do at this time is follow, because you cannot use a pit maneuver nor spike strips on a motorcycle, so that kind of limits their abilities to stop this.
Oh, okay. So we figured no pit, but no spike strips at all either. So then the strategy is what?
Yeah, it's basically follow till he either gives up or runs out of gas. With the air unit overhead, they have the advantage, so the ground units don't have to stay that close to him, don't have to stay up with him, and let that air unit call the pursuit and keep track of where he's at, to where the ground units can then parallel
the freeway.
and get into the air. They'll get in different areas. And then getting on the freeway makes it a completely different thing, to where now he can pick up more speed and then split traffic and get through a lot quicker.
So
that's going to make it hard for them.
So now we're heading on to the 101 freeway. Whoa! This is an area where he will head into a lot more traffic. We're near Fallbrook, heading back into the valley, 101 South, and here we go. It means the pursuit's going to be faster, and it's going to be harder, I would imagine, for law enforcement to stay with this guy, right, Tim?
Well, yeah, because now he's going to be a little more traffic, a little more speed, and be able to split traffic a little easier up on the freeway and not have to worry about cross traffic nor red lights. So, but luckily he's not really going too much faster than the flow of traffic, and so the LA units on the ground can stay a little closer. But like I said, the air unit, he's not going to get away from the air unit, and it's just eventually going to end in one of two ways. He's either going to crash or he's just going to give up because run out of gas. So it's just a matter of time before this comes to an end.
It looks like we're getting off the freeway now. So that was not too long on that freeway. We're back now in the Woodland Hills, Canoga Park area, and presumably, Marla, back closer to this guy's house.
Yeah, which is where this all started. Of course, you made the point, Tim, that an air unit, even if ground units lost him, the air unit will, in fact, track him still. LAPD does have that airship above, just as we do at Skyfox, Ventura Boulevard, and Glade Avenue. So, Tim, what's your word to the wise as we watch this in terms of if you do find yourself as one of those unsuspecting drivers in a pursuit, what should you do?
Well, the primary thing is to pull to the right if you hear sirens and see lights in your rearview mirror. But if you're in a position where they're right up on you, because when you're coming or you're at a red light, just stay in your lane and hold your course and speed and let the pursuit go by you and let the officers come in behind you. The last thing the officers need is for you to be making rapid movements. And as the motorcycle goes by, you try to lane change to get to the right, just as that officer behind you is trying to pass. So they're trained to pass on the left as much as possible, because drivers are instructed to move to the right if they see lights and sirens. But most times these pursuits will be on you before you even know it. And that's the dangerous part is, you're just driving home from work or driving home from the store, but all of a sudden this pursuit ends up going right by you. Now, we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, Topanga Canyon Boulevard and Providencia Street speeds about 40 miles per hour. Now, of course, slowing down, which we've seen this behavior where it seems to be minding his P's and Q's. When he gets to an intersection, he'll actually stop. Now making a right there on Dumetz Road, back well into a residential neighborhood. There's another scene, Tim, at presumably where this all started at his home. The LAFD responded. So I'm sure you know that is the initial report, that he was seen with a gun, waving it erratically perhaps. They're concerned about his mental health. So how does that play into, if you're an officer out there in pursuit, when you're thinking about him being armed and also his mental state?
Well, you're taking that all into consideration, as well as the watch commander at the station is getting as much information you can from all different sources and feeding that to the pursuing units. And with the first thing here is, if he's armed, what did he do at the house? I mean, was he just brandishing the weapon? Did he fire the weapon? You have to have all that information. Unfortunately, we don't have that. But the thing is, as an officer, you have to follow with the expectation of anything can happen at the end. You try your best to de-escalate it when it comes to an end. But if he's circling his neighborhood, as we're talking about, is near his registered, the location of where it all started, it could very well end up into a standoff when he gets back to the house.
So, when you got a motorcycle like this, what tools do law enforcement have to stop this thing? Is it simply wait it out?
Wait it out, Alec. I mean, that's it. I mean, you can't use any of the things that you would do on a car. You can't, cut him off or do things like that. Now, if he gets between traffic, pulls up between two vehicles at a stop sign, I mean, you could easily go in front of him, but the problem now is you have an armed suspect, and you don't want to put an officer in harm's way by pulling in front of him. So, you can't go up and tap him. You can't put a spike strip down. You just have to wait for him to either give up or run out of gas or just hit something. I mean, there's not too much you can do with a motorcycle. Like I said, most motorcycle pursuits don't last very long because of the maneuverability of that motorcycle. They get away quite often.
Well, this one's lasted almost an hour at this point. We're just getting some new information, Tim, and we're hearing that the initial want was assault with a deadly weapon. How does that change things?
Well, that raises it to a high felony. I mean, the difference between brandishing this fight to show you my gun, assault with a deadly weapon is I point that gun at you and have the capable means of doing great bodily harm. So, yeah, it makes it a felony, and it is all coupled in now with that. Is this pursuit is not felony evading. So it's just a matter of what's going to happen at the end. And the officers have plenty of time on their hands as far as the way he's driving. There's not a big risk to the motoring public to where they have to act upon this. And also they have the air unit overhead that's handling all the maneuvers that he's making, all the different turns. The officers and the units don't have to stay right on him, and they can drive at a slower pace and take their time getting through intersections. But the way he's driving, he's just stretching it out. You've seen this before in cars when they get up on the freeway and they're doing 45 miles an hour on the freeway and just going forever. It's just, just delaying the inevitable what's going to happen. And that's exactly what's going on here. He's just not really trying to go get away, but he's just trying not to go to jail too quick. And that's kind of how these things work and the mindset. Because, I know he's not thinking, I can't get away now. It's just a matter of what am I going to do next? Try to make that decision and then working his way around his own neighborhood where he's familiar and feels comfortable.
Seems like he's kind of enjoying this prospect of taunting them, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I don't know if he's into taunting. I just think he's in the confused state now to where He's just trying to figure out what he's going to do next. He's already made a big mistake. He probably realizes that. No telling what the argument was, what the incident was that caused him to, brandish a weapon and assault somebody with a weapon. Now, whether he fired at them or just pointed it at them, that's what you're going to have to figure out as the investigating officers. And they're trying to get all that information they can because they have to react to what his state of mind is. If he actually fired at somebody, then that changes the dynamics quite a bit. But if he's just mentally unstable, he happened to have a gun, and he pointed it at somebody, you have to take that all into account on how this goes. But all that is kept in the back of your mind, but you're going to react to what he does at the end of this pursuit. If he comes to an end, gets off the motorcycle, and then points a gun back at the officers, then deadly force is going to be justified. But they're going to do everything they can to use their continuum force with less lethal, verbal, things of that sort before it gets to that point, if he gives the officers at the end of this the opportunity to use those tools.
It seems that he is just sticking in this particular neighborhood. At one point, he literally did a loop in that same loop over and over. So if you're officers, I understand that the spike strips aren't an option and the pit maneuver is off the table because he's on a motorcycle. Are you strategizing, though, where there is an opportunity to box him in somehow? Because I'm just seeing the trailing black and whites, and you can almost kind of predict where he's going at this point.
Well, he wants to be the lucky officer that gets in front of him. That would be the first question. So I don't think boxing him in is going to be an option here because of the weapon of his ability or actions of assaulting somebody with that weapon. I said, I wish we had more information to where did he actually fire it? Did he actually threaten somebody in a very aggressive way, or did he just point it at somebody? So that's a lot of things that they're taking into account. But the boxing in, I wouldn't want to be the officer that has to get in front of him because if he all of a sudden has that, we're talking the mental issues that he might be having. He feels trapped, and you don't know what you're going to do at that point. So the best bet I would, as the pursuing officer, and probably as the watch commander or the sergeant on scene, is he's going to run out of gas eventually. He is not putting anybody in danger with his driving. He seems to be slowing down at the intersections, stopping, and working his way through. He's not going through at high rates of speed and putting officers in harm's way. So right now, as I said, my feet is a little bit behind yours. I see stopped now.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, you'll see him go again, accelerate again, and now he's stopped again. So, or almost. I'm curious, in your history as an officer, because we cover these so often, when they do come to an end and when you do get the suspect into custody, what is their mental state like at that point? I mean, do you find them to be regretful?
It's kind of like the Forrest Gump. You box of chocolate, you never know what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody who just kind of goes, yeah, I'm sorry, officer. And you have the other ones that are kicking and fighting the whole way to the cars. So it's just, you never know what you're going to get into these. And right now, he doesn't seem that aggressive. He doesn't seem that erratic. So, you just have to go with him. And like I said, that's what you teach new officers in your training, field training, is you have to be flexible, have to be able to react to what's going to happen at the end of this, and have a plan. If he comes up with a gun, that's usually just muscle memory that comes out at that point to where, you return fire as quickly as he returns fire at you, and that type thing to where you have to respond to what because he feels safe there. And as I said before, is circling the neighborhood. He's trying to stay in his comfort zone. He's trying to stay in a position to where he feels comfortable. And, you know, if he decides to get out and run, he'll do, you know, his run through the houses, jump a fence, turn a corner, and hopefully get back to his house before the officers can catch up with him on foot. But the problem is, he has that area overhead who's not going to let him get too far. So it's just a matter of time now.
Well, and we're hearing that apparently when this all started, they went to this guy's house because they were concerned about him with a gun, and then he just drove out of the garage and drove past them and sort of caught all the officers by surprise. That wasn't what they were expecting. And, you know, about an hour later, he's still driving around the neighborhood, now at Shoup Avenue and Oxnard Street in the San Fernando Valley.
He's down in the flats area, down to the hills. I had a case one time here in Huntington Beach. We went on a domestic violence call, and as we walked up to the house, the male drove straight through the garage door coming out. So he took the garage door with him as he drove the car out of the garage. So that was kind of exciting and, you know, unexpected to us. But, you know, like I say, you never know what you're going to get here. And it's officers, part of the job is you have to expect the unexpected. It's just, you know, something that does happen, and if you think you haven't seen it before, just give it a couple weeks, so you're probably going to see it. But people driving off in cars and taking off on motorcycles, yeah, that's something that does happen. And he probably knew the cops were coming, and he got to his car as the officers arrived on scene. So, and off he goes. Now, like I said, he's just delaying the inevitable. The only thing that I would worry about is that the pursuing officers, if that motorcycle starts running out of gas, is that he gets off it and tries to grab a door handle of a car next to him and takes a car. And so that would be an issue there. And that's always the thing in a pursuit, that once they damage the vehicle they're on or the vehicle they're driving is disabled, or if taking somebody else's car, that's why the police always urge you to drive with your doors locked, and, you know, don't stop if somebody grabs your door, just take off.
Glade Avenue and Victory Boulevard, not far from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills. Just for a little bit better perspective, looks like we're at a stop sign. He's heeding the traffic laws there. He's clear to make his right turn. He does. You know, since that Forrest Gump reference and putting that into perspective, Tim, it's just, boots are like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get. And isn't that the truth as we, you know, have been on this? You say that typically these motorcycle pursuits don't last long. This one has lasted for about, we've been on the air with it for 30 minutes, but it really started about 6:30. So,
so where we are now, this is what used to be called the Topanga Plaza, now the Westfield Topanga. So this is a busy area where there's a lot of folks that may be shopping at night, a lot more cars in this particular area. This is, as we drive down to, we'll also head to what used to be called the Promenade around there as well. So a lot of restaurants in this area, strip malls in this area, in addition to the residences and apartment buildings nearby. So this is a more populated place than what we have been mostly driving through for much of the last 45 minutes or so, which creates more dangers for the folks that live nearby, that may be out for a walk, or that may be driving home at this hour as we approach 7:30 here. So now we're at Sylvan Street.
Randy Avenue.
Randy Avenue, Sylvan Street.
What I'd be looking for here is a parking structure. I mean, that'd be the next thing that would cause issues. Now, I would be tightening up the ground units at this point. It'd be in the observer and the helicopter, the tactical flight off, because he gets into a parking structure, then the air unit loses sight, and then, you know, if he can get off the bike and get into the buildings or get into an area where he can change clothes or take off jackets, take off whatever he has on to change his look, there'd be an issue there. But around Topanga, that's a big shopping center with lots of parking structures. But it looks like he's just circling the block in that area. So, and you're right, there are a lot of folks on foot there too. So I'd love to know what happened at the house with the gun to get a better idea of his state of mind, whether he just just messed up, got mad, had a moment of insanity and a moment of poor judgment, or is he actually somebody who's capable of using a weapon on somebody? But watching his driving, to where he's just driving normally and not really ripping around and going through lights and causing issues like that, it kind of tells me he still has a little bit of sense as far as his good well-being, as far as, you know, what's going on. He knows that, you know, he's not in that fight or flight mode now to where he's just trying to get away at all costs. He's right now to delay the inevitable of going to jail. So it's time at this point. But right now I tighten it up a little bit while he's around those parking structures.
Hey, Tim, you mentioned earlier that the steps for officers is verbal, then use less lethal, and then deadly in terms of force on how to bring this to an end. When we're seeing him stop at a stoplight and the black and whites pull up and the officers get out and guns drawn, obviously there's verbal interaction there. Speaking of less lethal, though, is that a point where they would tase him?
If they're close enough, they could. You know, just a matter of getting enough, you know, close enough to where that they don't actually do something or get to him and get through his clothing that he's wearing. Yeah, that's a possibility. A 38 millimeter rubber round would be another way to encourage him to get off the motorcycle. But it's just a matter of what's going on in the background with that watch commander, with all the information they're getting. And, you know, he could very well be on his phone right now talking to somebody, because a lot of these big bikes like these big road bikes are set up with cellular phone setups to where they can talk while they're driving. So all that information we don't know. And on the media side, having flown police helicopters, in fact, still flying police helicopters, and now coming out of retirement with the news, having flown with news for so long, it's a lot of times that when you're in the news, you're kind of way behind the curve on the information, and a lot of information doesn't get out. So you see every time it comes to a stop, the officers come up behind him, pop the doors, and they immediately get on the verbal, say, hey, turn off the bike, get off the bike, get off the bike, show us your hands, that type of thing. And if they get a chance, you know, there may be a policy with LAPD. I don't know their policies by heart, but I know Huntington Beach, they weren't allowed to use a taser on somebody who was on a vehicle, a bicycle or a motorcycle or anything of that sort. So, so maybe LAPD has that same policy as well. So you don't want to hit somebody with a taser who has a vehicle or a motorcycle like this, and they suddenly gun away, and the motorcycle takes off and leaves them there. But or he takes off, breaks the leads, and ends up crashing it. So there's all kinds of things you have to consider when you can do what. And so right now, as a police officer, I would just follow him, because he's not going to get away. The air unit's going to stay with him. There's no sense in raising the level of force to a point to where he's not endangering anybody. He's not really causing that any problem. Now, if he's driving along pointing guns at people, then that changes it. Right now, he's just riding his bike at a normal rate of speed, picks up speeds here, nothing outlandish.
There are reports that we're seeing that this suspect may be carrying not one but two different types of firearms on his person. So obviously that heightens things. We're working to confirm that. And also reports that what happened earlier this evening, that there was a baseball game underway that had to be canceled because of out of concerns for a man wielding a gun in the neighborhood. So obviously, as we work to confirm those reports, that brings a sense of heightened concern as officers continue to follow this guy on a motorcycle.
Yeah, well, you know, one gun, two guns, it really doesn't matter. It just depends on if he's carrying a long gun. Hopefully, you know, you'd be able to see the long gun, and that would just change how close you would actually get to the person. So, yeah, it's just it depends on what's going on at the end. I said all that information is good, kind of his state of mind. Why does he have two guns? Is he planning to do something really dangerous at the end? Or is he just trying to, clear his mind and figure out what he's going to do? And so it just you have to wait till the end to see what he's going to do. And from that point on, it's it's just anybody's guess what'll happen when this comes to an end. But the guns, it really doesn't change dynamics too much. You know, just maybe he just was trying to leave and take his guns with him, and then the police showed up a little bit too fast. So, you know, it's just unfortunate it's gotten to this point.
And we're now going to be dealing with the sunset, too. We're seeing aspects of that, which makes this a little more challenging as well for law enforcement, and a little bit harder for everybody to see as they're sort of driving and battling with the sun on this, you know, some parts of Southern California are socked in by the coast, but the West Valley looks like it's got a nice sunset going right now as well.
Yeah, you get that low sun and it starts picking up all the moisture in the air, and for the camera operators, it's really difficult when you get what we used to call down sun when you're on the backside of the. Once he comes around the other side, it'll clear up, but that doesn't affect the air unit because he's right over the top of them, and about 300 feet, 400 feet of them, and now with the dews meter much higher. So, yeah, the visual is going to be a lot different as you see as he gets around with the sun behind him. That our picture clears up quite a bit, but you see he's making some turns and doing things like that. It's just he's, you know, just trying to get away, but I haven't seen any gesturing. They've had such a wide shots here that I haven't seen any real gesturing or anything that really causes me to be concerned that his mental state of, you know, is he going to hurt somebody when this thing comes to an end? You know, that's kind of a thing you kind of have to watch for.
All right.
And good.
And, I was let our viewers know that you, Tim, are on just a couple seconds delay, but we want to pull up some video that you will see too, Tim. And let's get your perspective on this. The moment that he exited his garage in this nice neighborhood here in the San Fernando Valley, you saw the garage door open, and then he just pulled out on his motorcycle. And you see the cops right there, 1, 2, 3, and and he was on his way. This was more than an hour ago. The live picture is a smaller box there on the upper left-hand side of your screen, and then the previously recorded is the bigger box there. So we see him leave. It seemed pretty eventful when he pulled out, like he was just leaving to go to the store, and just drove right by, rode officers outside his home, and now it looks like we're back on Wyndham Street and Melba Avenue this is his cul-de-sac. Wow. As we see more and more of those black and whites, and this is that address.
And you see the law enforcement sort of hanging out. Looks like it might be a high school right there. And yeah. Look, so it looks like they may have tased him. A big group now running towards this guy. He's off the bike. Yep.
And that's, in fact, that's his home. That's the video we just saw of him in the garage. Plenty of officers. This tree obviously sort of in the way as our Skyfox is maneuvering around so that we can get a better look at down below. But officers, you always judge them by their demeanor. Several of them standing at bay, as looks like they're on the ground now trying to put this suspect into handcuffs.
So the good news, Tim, is that you know, not a huge surprise that he would go home. Clearly, they were all ready for him.
Tim, you called it. You said he'd probably go back home.
And that's how it ends. The joyride's over.
Yeah, just the one on when he left, did you see how many police cars were already there? So this had to be some type of situation where the officers were there talking with them, trying to get him out, because there was way too many cars there for this to just be a straight radio call and them pulling up and then you know, trying to talk to him. But there was definitely a lot of cars there waiting. So to me, it sounds like they had conversation with him prior. He just decided to drive out of the scene. So, yep, good. It all ended the way easy, and everybody in custody, and no innocent motorists hurt.
Yeah, several seen there. There he is on his feet now and clearly in handcuffs. Tim Lynn, retired police officer, much for joining us tonight for this latest pursuit here on Fox 11.